terms of why PlantPAx is a DCS and why is it unique and why should you look at it compared to existing DCS systems. But we'll also be specific on this release that's coming. What is the feature set? Why should you care? What will customers get as a benefit of our latest release? We'll talk about that as well. And we'll have time for questions as it makes sense. So I'll kind of be in the middle. Tanya, if you need me to move or anything like that, you just scream out. And again, hopefully everybody on Facebook is enjoying this as well. So let's ground set. What is a distributed control system, or DCS? It's important because there's a lot of specifications based in industries that look at DCS systems because they control analog things. They control the temperature, the pressure, the flow. Unfortunately for me, like when I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, when I looked at how things are made, the cool stuff is the moving conveyor belts and making Oreo cookies and filling bottles, right? DCS is not that, unfortunately. But it's so important when you're making things. I always think of brewing, because I like beer, right? You got to make the beer before you bottle it, right? So you control temperature, pressure, and flow. That's a DCS system that controls that aspect of it. And then it talks to, typically in the historically, we talk to a PLC to do the discrete control, the bottling, the filling, the cartonizing. Great thing about PlantPAx is we go start differentiating and talking about what's next. We can be a plant-wide system. So when you talk things about breweries, we can control the make side, and we control the discrete side as well, the packaging side. So that's one of the things that let us speak out. But in any good customer-centric selling piece, you have to provide yourself equal before you differentiate. So what are people's definition of a distributed control system, or DCS? I have one. My background, before I came to Rockwell, was actually working with Foxborough, who was bought by Enclosures, which is now bought by Schneider, right? So a huge kind of lineage that way. But I cut my teeth on a Foxborough IA system, traditional DCS system. So when Rockwell kind of came on, and when I was hired 11 years ago, there was significant investment not only in hardware and software, but also in people. Because the important thing about what is a DCS that's different from Rockwell is it's a methodology. It's a singular workflow that you have to perform against. And when I say that, what I mean is people don't expect to buy parts and just engineer a system. That's typically been a lot of people that buy Rockwell historically have done that. People that buy a DCS system expect to just take it and play with it, put my intellectual property in. I need to have an out-of-the-box library. I need to have a template set up for my HMI that has the navigational buttons, that has the units of operation all there. I need to have all those guardrails and all those things set up already so that I have a look and a feel that's consistent, that's not different, that feels different every time. So that's the expectation. The beauty of Rockwell is it's still using our product. Our product is very good. But we have to put those guardrails on it. We're not telling you to buy new products. We're just telling you how to set up the product to create a system out of it. The business unit I represent today, we're all about creating that singular workflow that presents it. But still, people say, okay, do you have bulk engineering tools? Yes, we do. Things like ACM, things like system strategies we serve. People say, well, I have an operator. Do I have a control room environment where I have navigation to get through screens? I have a library that I just open up for a valve, a pump that I didn't have to build. Yes, we do that. Do we tackle batch management? Do we tackle asset management? Do we have a historian? Do we report? Yes, we do all of that. So at the end of the day, we want to ensure that people say, does Rockwell have a DCS? The answer is yes, we do. It's PlantPAx. Okay? Simple as that. So, okay, well, okay, Rockwell, you're a DCS, great. But I'm still not going to buy you because I bought Delta V and I bought Honeywell Experion systems, I bought Foxborough IA systems for 20, 30 years. Why should I change all that up and consider Rockwell? Well, the important thing is I think there's a strong case for it. We've alluded to some of that already. But let me make your case for you from a modern DCS perspective. First, we talked about this. You had islands of automation in the past. You have that brewery. If I was controlling that brewery with Foxborough IA, guess what? I'd do the make side and make the beer. Then I'd have this little integrator piece that would connect to an Allen Bradley PLC for the discrete control. Rockwell, again, with integrated architecture that was out there before we named PlantPAx, was all about plant-wide control. multi-discipline control. Being able to, within one platform, serve process needs, or fill discrete needs, fill batch, fill safety needs. One system. The benefit is a lower total cost of ownership. What if I could buy one system, train my operators on one system, have spares for one system? There's an advantage there, there's a benefit. So for us, that is still an important differentiator in the space of being able to do plant-wide control. Scalability. And for us, a lot of times, our biggest benefit in terms of scaling down. Paint another picture for you. When I was at Foxborough, and maybe I wanted to tackle an OEM type skid, smaller type application. I could do it. Foxborough had these things called Foxborough A-squared, which were Eurotherm controllers with a hear me? Sorry, I lost my second. With a Wonderware front end, HMI. Fine, worked great. But when I wanted to grow that system, or integrate it in, or grow to a larger DCS system, and I wanted to go to Foxborough IA, guess how much I could use of what I already built? Zero. Zip. Nothing. There was no way that you could kind of grow with the system. That's why it's important to note that we're not creating new product. One of the biggest strengths of Rockwell is our built-in scalability of product. Logix, whether that's compact to control, still uses Studio 5000. My HMI, that could be a panel view up through a full PC-oriented control room, still uses FactoryTalk HMI. Okay? So you can grow with the system, so you can scale down and provide a system at the right size for the right needs. That's important. That's a differentiator for us. We talked again about DCS as being children of the 70s and 80s. They were built to be islands of automation from a security standpoint. They had proprietary networks. When I was at IA, it was called field bus or node bus. It's not the field bus you understand today, but it was a proprietary network, which made it very hard for that system to talk to third-party pieces, be able to provide information and help. You heard Frank talk today about how we're supporting the connected enterprise. To me, that means how does the information get in the right hands of the right people at the right time? If you have a system that's built on proprietary networks that can't talk to third parties, how can you support a connected enterprise when you can't even talk to anything else? So differentiator for us is how we build our system on unmodified Ethernet, how we're open to talk Modbus, any kind of protocols out there. As part of this release, you'll see we're now talking OPC UA. That capability of getting information out and connecting and providing the operator with pieces of information, and maybe coming now from a Schweitzer relay on IEC 61850. That information gets to the operator to help you do your job better. It's important for us, it's a differentiator for us. Last but not least, how we go to market. Again, if I use a story from my past working at Foxborough, we'd have guys like myself, girls like my, guys and girls, guys like myself, that would be able to, I had to make sure I covered my bases. So we would take the system from commissioning through delivery to deployment. That was a good thing, but guess what? There were 4 of me on the whole East Coast that could actually serve and deploy and help the system for that. You talk about the number of people on the ground that know Rockwell, that know Rockwell systems, Rockwell hardware and product. That's a huge number. Take even the group in here, I don't think you can understand that. That can serve, that can deliver solutions, that can be that local touch for a customer, somebody they're comfortable with, either from having someone next door or being able to support with a local touch, local flavor. At the same time, us being able to deliver internally from a Rockwell perspective. All of that flexibility is advantageous to the customer from a speed to market and flexibility perspective. So that is another differentiator for us. So 4 tenets that we talk about to define Rockwell as a competitive advantage in the DCS space. Plant-wide, scalable, open, flexible delivery. Any questions on that? So what I want to do, and we'll come back a little bit to really what makes up some of the inner workings of PlantPAx that are important for you to know. Let's jump off of our scalability and jump off of our plant-wide nature, our tenets of differentiation, and paint the picture of what our 4.5 release does to continue to empower what we're doing in the DCS space and further differentiate us also in this space. So when you look at the release 4.5, again now, coming to the finish line, a availability to you at the end of July. We're going to talk about 3 themes. We're going to talk about these features that are smart. And when you think about that, you either think of it from a role or a benefit perspective. From a benefit perspective, how do we just remove work? How do we make things more intuitive? A lot of times I even think of the engineers and deployers of the system, if you will. How do we make your life easier? How do we take time out of what you do to commission a system? Also for our operators, we talk about the roles and people that are on the system day by day. How do they interact with the system? How do we make their lives easier when they're looking at screens to make better decisions? Be more line of sight into alarm conditions as they happen. How do we allow them to handle alarms better? There's so much to the day in the life of an operator that we're supporting, and that's the productive nature. How do we efficiently design and build? How do we make those lives easier so that they can get their jobs faster, either remove more downtime, whatever that is. And you'll see that as we go through these feature sets. Last but not least, protective. Because you even noticed we talked about one of our differentiation being open on modified Ethernet. Great to pass information across, but you need to do that in a protected nature as well, and a secure. You talk about cybersecurity, you talk about all those keywords that keep people up at night. And we have answers to that. We have partnerships, like we partner with Cisco, so their intellectual property that resides within our switches, etc., so that information passing happens, but happens safely and securely. That's important. So let's start through this real quick. Again, let's think of the operator's day in the life. You've seen changes from us in the past that are based on ISA standards now that look at how do we allow for more high performance. You hear that. You hear about grayscale. You hear about how the inner artist in me is dying because we're going back to all gray and two-dimensional stuff, right? When I was at Foxborough, my first job was making graphics, and if I could make some colorful three-dimensional truck move around the screen to load and offload, I must be really helping the scenario. How cool is that? Every operator running words wants to work on that system, right? Well, guess what? It's been proven that kind of stuff is distracting. It helps you not focus on where you have to focus. How much clearer does problems show on a gray screen when something red and alarming comes up? It's been proven. Much more effective. And our lives are just built not to make the inner artist in us happy, but to make the operators more productive and intuitive. So that's what we're working on. The new library that we're presenting as part of this release is taking that grayscale and taking it to the faceplates. So we're removing color and animation even from the tasks. So the things, the go-dos, the alarm conditions show up in a way that helps me do my job better. Okay? So the new library is out there. We're making it better for the operator and saying, well, if I'm an operator, I don't need to necessarily worry about how I disable a pump from a maintenance perspective or change scaling from an engineering perspective. So we're creating a basic faceplate here that's focused on what the operator needs to see. And then having an advanced screen with proper logins so that our engineers and our maintenance users can go and see a separate screen that has their care-abouts, changing configurations, disabling pumps, disabling valves if needed. Okay? So we're focused on how do we make an operator's day in the life better here. Important. What are we adding to that library? You heard me say initially that what if some information is coming from a Schweitzer relay now? There's critical information that can help an operator diagnose a problem or be prescriptive on some kind of motor performance or overheating before something really serious or bad happens. It's an important piece. You may have heard us talk about our IPP, or Intelligent Package Power Release. A lot of that is based on, and you see it, maybe some of you that are in water, wastewater, or in power, so much of those plants have either connection to intelligent e-houses or switchgear, where those type of Schweitzer relays or ABB relays are prevalent, and there's information there. Why don't we bring that to the operator so that they can have knowledge of those devices as well? We're doing that as part of this release. It's available today. And we're making the look and feel match the library here. Now again, we're going to work on this to take the color off of that as part of the release. But from the previous format, having the same look and feel, and guess what? These devices may have 2,000, if we even talk about drives, 3,000, 4,000 parameters. The important piece here is by having the smart people that have used these devices, what would be the 5 or 10 pieces of information that would help the operator do their job better? That's what the faceplate needs to show. So we're highlighting things that we know will be beneficial for the operator to see, so you don't have to do that. So that's an important piece that we have. So we built that for Schweitzer, for ABB relays. We're now looking at like G multi-lens for some of you out there from the electrical perspective that we're tackling next. So this isn't, we're not on the stopping line here. This is just a thing we'll continue to build out here. Let's keep looking at that device integration. For us, the tires of our car are the instruments. How can we control and make beer if we don't know what the temperature the beer is at, or what the flow or the level in the tank is, right? So we work with a lot of partners, and now a lot of those devices now are showing up on Ethernet, right? Plug and play, everything, the Internet of Things, everything with an IP address. It's always been great for us from a control perspective to be able to drop in an Ethernet flow meter and be able to have all of that to be able to use for my control algorithms. We also knew that from an asset management perspective, there are times where I need to access those devices to make changes to that, maybe from Asset Center, through my PDC there. Part of that strategy involved setting up a communication path where I could sit in the PC or sit in a control room and remotely change parameters on those devices. It was hard for us to do that on Ethernet devices until this release because we were missing a connection piece, what was called the communications DTM for Ethernet devices. We now have that. So we're now enabling not only bringing in information for control, but allowing users to access directly, via remote way, if you will, from the control room to make changes to those devices. Important piece for us. We just talked about how we support open, how we support communications. Now supporting OPC UA in 2 ways here. First piece here is supporting from a live data perspective, so those devices that are resident third party that speak OPC UA, now we can get that information into the Rockwell system. Second piece of that is if we need to go and send information out, we can now do that through the Vector Links Gateway, supporting OPC UA. So both on incoming and outcoming, we now support OPC UA, which allows us then to talk and bring in information and send information to a lot more, either servers, devices, all sorts of third-party pieces here. Let's also talk about our deployers.
Can you go back to your slide 1 second?
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead. This one or this
yeah,
one?
no, so you don't need decon anymore. Okay. Yep.
You got that on that?
Yeah, I see that. That's what I see. Okay.
That's an important piece. Sometimes I like to say those terms on the side. I know enough to be dangerous on that, right? So. All right, so for our deployers again, how do we make your life easier? A lot of times if you're taking advantage of either physical or even virtual servers, you'd have setups where I need to have a system server, a SQL, a historian, and asset management on separate devices. For certain applications, when you're looking at up to about 2,000 I/O, we're going to provide a version that allows you to consolidate those 4 images into 1 server. So from a licensing perspective, from a simpler to deploy methodology, we're providing a really nice option here for certain size applications. So a nice way to take advantage of that, to use some of the time and effort for our deployers here. Another thing that takes a lot of time is enclosures. I want to have I/O to the field, and until this release, it was always a custom build. Let me build out what size enclosure, let me figure out the DIN rail where it goes, and I have to load the I/O, etc. With this release, and actually the good thing is you can buy this today, it's part of our LSD program where you can deploy this. We have 2 part numbers. One is an enclosure that has the infrastructure, if you will, that you can populate with I/O in the field, if you don't know that yet. Or if you do know your I/O, part number that can populate the I/O and have that enclosure sent to site that way. You're talking about at least a couple to 3 weeks, if not more, of a reduction in time, because it's not kind of a build to order anymore. So that's an important piece. How do we remove time? For our deployers, time is money. We want to reduce that, reduce the money that goes in. Now, are you going to charge your customers less? That's not my decision, right? Maybe. Talk about virtualization. We were one of the first systems to be able to provide our offering as a set of virtual images. So you didn't have to worry about what version of Factory Talk View works with what version of Historian Studio, right? I can just buy AWS and OWS and deploy it. With every release we have at PlantPAx, we update these images to put that sand, that line in the sand, saying don't worry about it. Take advantage of our release templates that are released for each of these releases that have, you know, for this release it'll be taking advantage of Studio version 31, Factory version 10, you know, so we're providing that detail so you don't have to worry about it. Again, we started talking about DCS customers expect a singular workflow. I don't have to worry about building the system and knowing what software to go with what. We want you to take advantage of this. Makes your life easier. ControlFlash users, we're going a little bit deep here, but this is also important for the deployers of the system. ControlFlash users in here today? Some? This is another feature that's actually available today, so you don't have to wait till the end of July. But if you're managing firmware, but you want to have a holistic picture of all those firmware versions that are across your plant, this ControlFlash Plus is a great add to allow you to have a picture of the firmware revisions that exist across your plant and be able from a single location to be able to update those effectively. That's an important piece. Yeah, Ben.
Does that integrate with Asset Center's inventory tool?
Let me check that, Ben. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'll make sure I get you the answer on that.
Okay.
For sure.
And it is qualified against the PlantPAx system release that you're talking about too, or?
Yes, yes it is. So even though this feature is released today, Ben, yeah, we're highlighting that as part of the actual release because of the time. So again, we talk about children of the 70s. Sometimes you think about our editors being, wow, man, this feels like I'm working with Windows 3.1 or before that, right? So we're talking, again, thinking of the deployers. How do we make even the engineers' day in life easier by having a modern look that's easier to debug, easier to troubleshoot? And the first one we're showing here is function blocks, because when you're talking to process users, a lot of times they live in function block editors. So now being able to take advantage of the Studio 31 release, highlighting an updated editor for function blocks, as well as structured text, as well as for all our other libraries as well, right? If you had me come up and show ladder first, you'd probably throw me under the bus, right? DCS users use ladder, but right, you know, you don't want to admit that sometimes. But regardless of what you're using, right, we're providing an updated look and feel here. Again, focusing on operators. A lot of times the standard is quad monitors, multi-monitors. How do I know what I put and where, and how do I configure those clients so I get the right information on what area of the screen? We're helping you out here with multi-monitor client support. You know, a way that you can kind of build into the client file where you want placement of the screens to show up based on what your monitor layout is looking like. Okay, it's an important piece. Again, debugging and troubleshooting. How do we make an operator more effective to not only know what's going on in the system, be able to troubleshoot better? One of the advantages we're taking with the update to the HMI is an improved trending package, TrendPro. One of the nice things here you see is that leveraging of, say, discrete alarm conditions on top of the analog trend. So I know when a certain, say, 60 degrees here, my high alarm hit. Be able to see in reference where that alarm condition was met, when it was acknowledged, when it came out of alarm. You know, being able to layer that on top of the analog piece gives you more information to help make better decisions. This is an important piece here, and if we poke fun at Rockwell a little bit, we always talk about alarms and events. Right? People say, I don't know, what's an event mean? What does an event mean to Rockwell? What an event means to me is probably having a better context of when problems happen, what's the rest of the plant doing. So if I have a flow problem, you know, the flow that I'm getting on this line is problematic, it's always an alarm. Well, maybe I'd like to also see what the upstream valve is doing or the downstream pump, because that's probably part of the problem I need to look at. By working, again, in partnership with OSI Pi, we have something to take advantage of called Pi Asset Framework. And what that allows us to do is to be able to associate discrete elements or other pieces of information with an alarm condition. So every time I get a problem with that flow here, I can see, well, what was the valve doing? What was the pump doing? So I can troubleshoot the problem better. And guess what? It's not hammering the real-time server to get that information. We're taking that from the historian. Okay? So it's behind the scenes, but it allows that better perspective to troubleshoot effectively. Another piece here for the deployers is, again, cybersecurity. How do I know if my network is set up effectively enough to address the needs of the customer or address the needs of what best practices are? So again, we're taking advantage of a new network software tool. Actually, I apologize here. One thing you'll notice as I go through these sections, in black text I realize now doesn't show up fantastic. But this week here, the session, so if you look at SSO2, if you're really like, I want to see what's going on with the network software today, take a note of these sections. If your schedule allows, you'll be able to get more in-depth information about these portions of our release. Take note of these. And if you saw something already that you want to find out more about, you didn't notice what number I had put up here, come and talk to me. I'll make sure you get set up in the right way. But this, again, is important to say, how do I interrogate the network? How do I know if where my placement of firewalls and switches are correct? Right? This is a piece there that will help me. And again, I shouldn't say this, but we're not allowed to say millennials or Gen Ys. What am I, Tim? Am I a Gen X? I don't know. Right? What we do know is that there's also, when people are saying things that kind of keep me up at night, one thing is cybersecurity. The other thing is a workforce problem. I'm losing older engineers to retirement, and none of the new millennials, whoever is coming out of college now, want to work on an outdated control system, right? I want to do everything from here. I want to pull out my phone or my tablet and be able to do anything I need to do. That's been an important shift for us, whether that was the acquisition of Thin Manager from a content delivery perspective, to be able to take and steal a client, say from a control room, and be able to be untethered. So I'm over here by my pump, and maybe I have to be within 15 feet of it to be able to access it, part of Thin Manager. But I can acknowledge alarms. I can acknowledge badge calls. I can get interfaces like this on my phone, right? It's addressing the workforce issue. It's addressing people that say, this is how I'm used to being able to do things. I want to empower that. Okay, so that's a piece of it. Same way, batch has a mobile perspective, but we also know who are our batch users in here? Do I have some at least? Okay. For those users that maybe use factory talk batch, that was another children of the 70s and 80s, right? Definitely needed a nice facelift. So that's what we're talking about here as well. Is an updated look for our factory talk batch software that's there. Okay. That's one thing to take advantage of, along with factory talk batch mobile, right? So there's mobile interfaces that continue that mobile story as well. Because I don't want to have to run back to the control room to acknowledge a batch prompt, or I added 5 kilograms of ingredient B. Once I did that, do I have to run back to the control room to say, yes, I did it? No. You don't want to do that. Okay, so protected. We saw that as one of the feature sets we need to hit on. An important piece of this release is something we're calling area-based security. Before I explain what area-based security is, I need to talk about what our existing security was, which was role-based. So into the faceplates and everything, we kind of built that capability to say, if I'm an operator versus an engineer versus a maintenance supervisor, there are certain things I want to have natively access to, and there's some things I want to be protected from. Okay? But let's just take operators, for example. What if I have different areas of the plant that I want to segregate different operator roles to? So area 1, I have an operator that's accessing area 1 information as an operator, but they're not authorized or should be authorized to do the same kind of pieces at area 2. So there was a need for area-based security along with role-based security. The important thing about this release is we have both now. We address role-based and area-based security, so you can have segregation among roles and areas of your plant. And also provide line of sight detail, so if I want to associate a workstation to a particular area, I can do that. This is very important. Redundant shortcuts. So there's 2 pieces here about our communications. We started off with saying you have to be highly available, you have to be redundant to be able to play in the DCS space. It just has to be there. So that's been, in my 11 years, decades of work. It's always been kind of priority number 1 is to associate high availability. So it's important to know we're just making that even better here. So we're taking first just the communication between the data servers and the controllers here. So you talk about things like blind time reduction when I have a switch over. How do I empower, better communication so, LAN 1 or LAN 2 goes down and I still have full functionality? Because we had done things like, tethering of NICs and so forth like that. All these, again, I'm dangerous enough to say something, but not the expert, if you will. that ability to have fully redundant networks, not only from, say, the servers to the controllers, but also to the controllers to the I/O now, from a parallel redundancy protocol. We're supporting PRP. So when you look at that function of it, so before it was the servers to the controllers, but now that the controllers to the I/O, and we've addressed that in the past with things like ControlNet or the DLR ring, but there was always a need too to be able to support, fully redundant pathways to the I/O, which we now support with PRP support here as well. Talk about Thin Manager and the benefit that it brought to the table. But we knew how Thin Manager was licensed. There was a separation. We needed to make sure there was a clear integration to our PlantPAx system to Thin Manager. So the piece here is that pass-through login from Thin Manager to view clients on the OWS. So it's an important piece for us. So you could only log in once and have that advantage to take advantage of Thin Manager, which again, untethered operations, the ability to acknowledge alarms and prompts, everything that mobility is providing to take advantage of Thin Manager is part of the system, if you will. We've always actually updated the process system estimator to allow you to acknowledge what clients are Thin Manager clients as well. So when you're even sizing the system, you can take advantage of Thin Manager there as you build your system out. Again, 11 years here, we've seen our architecture grow. The architecture is not just limited to the physical or virtual space anymore, it's going into the cloud, right? So how do we properly provide coverage for wireless connections out to the cloud, et cetera? So as part of this release, we've had a lot of guidance and support on how we're helping you decide that's something that your clients are looking for, or if you're the client itself that's looking at how does the cloud work for me, what's the architecture need, what's the setup for those type of architectures. We're providing support there. That kind of extends things like CPWE, that kind of communication, that wireless connection. We're supporting that and supporting the safety and security of that. I can sit and talk to you guys for 3 hours if you want me to. Right? I have no problem doing it. But we don't have time to cover everything in detail, but there is a lot of other things that make up this release. Things like serving larger systems from 50 to 80 clients. So this will be, and again, if you have your mobile client session detail, you'll have these slides. You can take a note here if there's some other feature sets I want to take advantage of as part of this release. It's kind of an honorable mention section here to look at. A lot of these things that you see that we're highlighting become part of the system through characterization. System characterization is important for us because, again, it allows us to take advantage of our world-class product, our Logix platform, our View platform, and be able to put guardrails on it. What that means is we stress the system in Cleveland. Who's been to our characterization lab in Cleveland out of this front? You? Good. The whole purpose of this lab is to provide commercial guidance, right? We break the system there so you don't break it ever. When we say break it, we talk about things like critical system attributes. When I put a button on the screen and 15 seconds later something happens, no good. No good. So we stress the system and see when that display call-up time is broken, say over 2 seconds, over a second. If we don't paint trends in the appropriate space, if we don't serve alarms capably, we stress the system and load those controllers until we see those breaking points happen. And it's a living lab. So this new release has become part of characterization. Everything that we're talking about from the virtual image templates becomes part of what we stress. That's why this lab is so important. It continues to be updated as we have new hardware, software, firmware. We break it, so then the guidance is coming out to you as using our process system estimator tool, which PR02 specifically looks at that. It talks about how to build a system effectively. What are best practices, right? Because if I size a system, that's a great start. But I need to build tasks in the right way, not using continuous tasks, et cetera. It's just an example. So a lot of this provides that step through. We started talking about a singular workflow that's expected. Characterization provides for that as a starting point. The other side of the lab, I'm not self-promoting myself here. I lost right here. Yes, Rich.
Chris, when's the PSE going to be pushed out? Is it scheduled for July or?
Yes. So the update to the PSE will be Brady match in lockstep with the release, Rich. And actually, I think there's a lab on that this week as well to play with it. But PR02, I'm tag teaming with Armand this week as well, Rich looks We have some beta versions. I actually have a video that I've done as well, explicitly showing the new feature set within the system estimator, that if people are interested, they can get their hands on it. I'll get that out to you. The integration side, because a lot of people say, well, there's more to characterization. How do I know how the PlantPAx system responds to instrumentation? We partner with Henderson Houser, but we have a lot of everything from Fisher Rosemont to Yokogawa in that integration side of the lab. We show our power and process. We have drives, MCCs over there where we connect into the system. We have things like our friends at Phoenix Digital that work on the Ethernet space in terms of segregating and communications to other I/O chassis. This is all resides in our integration side of the lab, which is really important, where we build out those stories, where we build out how that communication happens. And power and process is another differentiator for us. And again, if you're not sick of me yet, I'll also be doing PR01, where we're going to talk about what we're doing in the process and power space, taking advantage of our native communications to MCCs, drives, etc. Okay? The design process, we said about that. PlantPAx was important to us because it provided us a name for our system. That's how people talk about it. Foxborough IA was a system. Did you know that actually Foxborough IA is built up of FoxView, FoxDraw, ICC, all these parts? The parts are there, but nobody talks about it, and they shouldn't. People that buy DCS do not want to talk about a product. They want to talk about a solution. That's why PlantPAx was created. But also created an interesting perspective that says, okay, I have logics in view. I'm PlantPAx. Not quite, right? I use the process system estimator. I'm PlantPAx, right? Getting close. Three-step process here. Yes, process system estimator is part of it. You've got to start out with the right equipment. You also got to follow best practices. How do I set up my task? How do I set up periodic tasks? How do I remove the continuous task? We have that filled out through our reference guide and user manuals. Verification. How do I know I did follow best practices and size it? Tools that interrogate the system that's going to give me a grading and performance on how I did. These three steps, we feel very comfortable to say you have PlantPAx system. Okay? But it is important to know PlantPAx is our name, our brand for our system, for our modern DCS. Again, PR02, specifically going in depth to the changes to the system estimator. And then deployment guides. Again, how do we share best practices and help you do that verification step, or excuse me, not the verification, but the implementation step? These manuals are there and updated again for the release that way. And guess what? We have a lot of time to spend this week. So what I want to do is highlight where you can spend some time to continue the conversation as you go through here. Again, define and size through estimation, process system estimator, PR02. If I want to implement the system, sharing of best practices, a lot of sections here. The library itself is in 4 and 5. If anybody knows Dale Reed and Mike Rudder and the team that have built our library, it was an important step for us from a system perspective. We have a new release of the library, obviously. There's more 4 and 5 of those locations to figure that out and understand what those feature sets are. You want to get your hands on the system, understand how these new features work together. Get your hands on the lab, the 9 and the 10 this week, if you can get it there, right? So I hope that you take that time to really take advantage, not only of the nice weather, right? Enjoy yourself. But we're very passionate about what PlantPAx does for Rockwell in terms of a solution to what we offer. Customers today, we're sharing the paradigm shift now. You see everybody from Blake on down to support our system message. It's important. Customers are not going to buy our product anymore and just do it themselves. Those days are gone. People will come and tell us what their problems are and what keeps them up at night. We have to be the people that say, we understand what your problem is, and we'll serve your needs with a system and a solution. That's what holistically what PlantPAx represents and what we want to keep wanting to enforce. So we hope you take advantage of this. Slide decks are part of your mobile app to get those. Let me know how you're doing, right? I had this 2 other times, right? Come back, tell me what I did wrong, so when I come back on Tuesday, Wednesday, I can even do a better job, right? Fill this out, and I think we're actually giving prizes out to customers that take advantage in using the mobile app and surveys, etc. But the main part again, we want to continue to do better. We want to make sure that how we're presenting the story makes sense, is beneficial to you. So please let me know what you think we can improve upon, and we'll take advantage of that. Don't forget, Philadelphia, November timeframe, 2 days before Automation Fair, is our Process Solutions User Group, or PSOC. Who's came and enjoyed that with us before in the past? Good, good. Great way, and this is, okay, yeah, I have a Rockwell hat on, so I'm biased, right? I can tell you the advantages of our system. What happens at PSOC is you have users talking to users on how they have been successful with PlantPAx and sharing those stories with other users. It's the prime aspect of what PSOC does. So those are the 2 days in Philadelphia again. Hope you join us and stay for Automation Fair. Thank you. Thank you to our Facebook Live audience. Hope everybody enjoyed this. Hope you enjoy the rest of the time in San Diego. Take care.